Before I get too far along, I just want to show you why you don't worry about having your 35-inch piece of tubing nice and straight. So you can see I'm just now starting to fit it through this bracket here, and you can see what kind of a bend I've got on it. I've got a pretty good bend. As I continue to feed this, as this side continues to get fed into the grommet, this side is going to have to be straightened so it can go through that hole. So you have to put a pretty good bend on it to get it started in here. Once you get it fed, as you feed it, this length has to be gradually straightened so it will go through that grommet. So this is where it gets ugly. You have to pre-bend it to get it started, and then once you have it started, it's going to want to continue to bend around, but you have to straighten it back out to poke it through the hole. And then you have to take this side and continue to straighten it as you feed it in, and you have to fit it in and around your existing line that's under here. So it does get ugly. You do kind of tweak the line a bit, but it's all good. It's nice and soft, and it will work out just fine for you. Just take your time, and we'll work through it. All right. All right, so continuing with these fuel lines, you can see that I now have this line run through the grommet, and it clears my existing fuel line that was in here, and it is connected to the fuel valve. Let's see if I can get a better shot of that. I can't hardly see what I'm filming here. So now that that's in, you can see that I've got the line running through the fuselage. Note that I don't have my bracket on yet. That's okay, because this line's actually going to come back out. At this point, I want to mark a line on the fuel line where the first dogleg bend is going to be. So what I'm talking about is, let me switch views here a little bit. This line will come across this bracket, will be ultimately mounted to the spar, so the line will come through. It'll come through the grommet on that small bracket, and it will come over this way, and then it will bend 90 degrees to come up this way parallel to the fuselage. So it's that first 90-degree bend that we have to figure out where we want to put it. Since the tube is connected to the valve, we can run it as straight as we can out the fuselage. And I've done some measuring, basically from this side of the fuselage to roughly center of this cutout right here where the grommet is going to go. That's where this line is ultimately going to pass through. So I measure from this wall out on the tube about 1 inch. And that's where I make my mark to make this first 90-degree bend that's going to be in here. Now, of course, you don't have the line perfectly parallel with the bulkhead here with this spar. It comes out at an angle so it can pass through here. So you have to kind of take that into account when you mark your line. So I'm going to come back from the way that the line is positioned now from this bulkhead, or from the side of the fuselage here. I'm going to come back off of this line probably about 1 inch to 1 1/8 inches. I'll mark my line, and then I'll show you what happens next. All right, so here we go with some of the ugly stuff. I've disconnected my line here from the valve. I pulled the line back into the fuselage so I can make this bend here. So, and of course you got to bend the line so you can get things pulled through. So again, it's not ugly. I mean, it's not pretty, but it does work. So I pulled it after I had marked where I want to make that 90-degree bend. I pulled the line back into the fuselage, and I made my first 90-degree bend, which you can see here. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and make the other 90-degree bend here in the opposite direction. The distance from this piece of tubing here and the piece of tubing that's going to go out this way, those parallel pieces of tubing need to be, I believe it is 3 3/4 of an inch. So if I measure from the center line of the tube here down this leg, 3 3/4 of an inch, make my mark. If I make my bend there correctly, the center line of this leg and the center line of this leg should be 3 3/4 of an inch apart. Let me do that, and I'll come back and explain it a little bit better. So here we are. You can see that I made the second bend here. So here's the first bend. This 90 is the one that's going to run, the line will run along the spar, and then that first 90 will bring it out this way to go through this cutout here where the grommet will be. This short length here is what's going to pass through the grommet, and then this 90-degree bends the line for this leg to go through the fuselage and ultimately attach to the wing. And like I said, the distance between this leg here and this parallel leg here, this distance is roughly 3 3/4 of an inch. So at this point, if I did everything absolutely perfect and I'm able to get this bent mess straightened back out, I should be able to take this end, poke it through this hole here. As I feed it in, gently unbend this leg as I feed it in, and then reattach it to the valve, reattach this bracket, and I'm done. But I'm sure I didn't do everything perfect, and I know I'm not going to be able to completely straighten this back into a perfectly straight line. So now is where I have to do some work and some finesse. At this point, before I feed this back through the hole, I've got to feed this bracket onto here. And like I said, I've already tested it. You can feed this bracket through these 90-degree bends, no problem. So I have to make sure I get this on the tube oriented correctly. And then I also have to fit the grommet on the tube that's going to go on this area here when this faceplate is in place. So let me do that. Let me put this on, put the grommet on. I'm going to feed the line through, try to straighten it out, try to get it reconnected to the valve, and see how we look.